mirror image in some ways to what we saw just Monday night. Remember, the Buccaneers trailed 16-3. They scored 2 touchdowns in the final 4 minutes of regulation to win 17-16. Here on Thursday, the Rams trailed 16-3 and scored 2 touchdowns in the final 4 minutes of regulation to win 17-16. I'm not saying he's Tom Brady, but maybe there's room on the roster. Here's a look at the numbers. Baker Mayfield finished the night 22 of 35 for 230, and that touchdown, one drive prior, was a Cam Akers touchdown to make a game out of it, and then the Raiders continually shoot themselves in the foot on the way down the field. There were penalties, both pass interference and a penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct that extended the drive, allowing Mayfield to throw a couple dimes down the field and win a football game 72 hours after arriving on this franchise. It's time now for the Geico 15. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com to find out how much you could save. Tyler Sullivan is in to break it down, and Tyler, Baker Mayfield here must have woke up feeling dangerous because he orchestrates a drive to win a football game for a team that he joined mere days ago. I mean, I'm not going to ask you for precedent here on what we just saw because it feels like something we've never seen before. What do you make of the moment?
Yeah, I mean, you said it earlier. I mean, obviously, he's not Tom Brady, but there he looked like Tom Brady. I mean, that is what we saw on Monday with the Buccaneers and the Saints. And boy, what an impressive performance from him, not only for him this season, but for his career in the NFL. I mean, this is something that he will be able to hang his hat on for quite some time. The fact that he was able to arrive to the Los Angeles Rams off waivers just a couple of days ago, if anything, he arrived in LA a few hours ago, if we're looking at it in the grand scheme of things. And the fact that he was able to look as sharp as he was, particularly down the stretch. Yes, there were some moments where he looked a little rusty. Obviously, he's just coming into this offense under Sean McVay, but ultimately an astounding performance by Baker Mayfield, an astounding performance by Sean McVay. I mean, ultimately, it was an utter collapse by the Las Vegas Raiders, but I did think that Sean McVay made a couple of savvy decisions down the stretch there, particularly not going for the onside kick after the Cam Akers touchdown. They just kicked it away and trusted their defense that Raiders offense couldn't move the ball, and Sean McVay was proved right.
It was unbelievable stuff here by Mayfield, still making sense of it here in the moment. I want to get back to some of it in a moment as well, but you mentioned it here. This is an utter collapse by Vegas and could be the difference between making and missing the playoffs. When we look back on this season, there will be multiple moments we look at. This will no doubt be one of them. What happened here from a play calling standpoint, from an execution standpoint? I mean, it was a stale third quarter and we didn't see much more in the fourth. What did you see or not see out of the Raiders tonight?
Yeah, undisciplined football down the stretch. I mean, you talk about the defensive pass interference one that erased a touchdown, erased an interception. I almost don't even count that one because, you know, those are going to get called every single time. The Tillery penalty where it was unsportsmanlike conduct that basically erased a sack is absolutely ludicrous down the stretch. Not only would that have put them at the 13-yard line, instead it moved them to the 28, but it stopped the clock on the final drive. That, to me, is absolutely killer. The pass interference stuff, sometimes it's unavoidable. Those things happen. The unsportsmanlike conduct stuff is bad coaching. That is undisciplined football under Josh McDaniels' watch. That, to me, that's the kind of stuff that simply can't happen. And ultimately, you even go down the stretch there. Obviously, that 3 and out before the 2-minute warning. I mean, you are already punting it away, or coming out of the 2-minute warning, punting it away back to the offense of the Los Angeles Rams. That is textbook how you lose football games down the stretch in the NFL. It's a little concerning now. If you're Josh McDaniels, I mean, this is not only that you lost to Baker Mayfield, who just arrived in Los Angeles. This is a growing theme for this team under his watch. I mean, you got to remember, this is also a Raiders team that lost to a Jeff Saturday, who had no prior head coaching experience in the NFL. I know that the reports are that Mark Davis won't move on from Josh McDaniels. This is a building block process, a 2-year, multi-year process. But this is not a good look for Las Vegas and the Raiders and Josh McDaniels right now. The fact that you lose those types of games when you are an experienced head coach, you're an experienced coach in this league. That to me is ultimately concerning.
We tend to live week to week when it comes to these head coaches and how hot the seat is. It seemed like for a second, Josh McDaniels, with 3 straight wins, had coached himself into a much more favorable position. But you bring up these 2 instances, whether it be Saturday, coaching with little to no experience, and then Baker Mayfield outdueling you here in the fourth quarter to get the job done. Let's pivot back to Baker, because I don't know how many different ways you can say it, but clears waivers, arrives on Tuesday, plays a game on Thursday, leads a 98-yard drive. I mean, it's storybook stuff for Mayfield. It doesn't mean a whole lot for LA in the here and now. It's their first win since week 6. But what does this mean for Baker moving forward?
Yeah, I think this is a very exciting time for him. I mean, now they have a ton of time for him to actually, meet his teammates over the next couple of days. I mean, really, this is where we're at with this guy. I don't even know if he's introduced himself to half these guys he's throwing touchdowns to win this football game. But ultimately, now they play next Monday night against the Green Bay Packers. You're at least able to marinate in this offense, build off of the things you did well in this game. And now you go down a stretch. You face a Packers team that might be out of this whole thing by the time they actually are playing this game, a Broncos team that's already out of it as well. That's a nice 2-week cushion to just build yourself back up. This is all it's going to be for Baker Mayfield, and it's a good spot for him. I mean, I know he had no control over who was going to claim or not claim him, but landing with Sean McVay in this offense, even without Cooper Kupp and without all the weapons that got them to a Super Bowl a year ago, the fact that you're under that tutelage, he's going to put him in positions to look good and have an opportunity to win football games. I don't know if that's necessarily going to automatically insert him into a starting job somewhere in the NFL next year, but he will be able to put good film on tape to at least give himself the opportunity to be a starting quarterback again somewhere in the league in 2023.
Self-belief can take you very far in this life, and we know Baker is not short on that, and that showed in the final 4 minutes of this football game. Let's take a look now at that AFC playoff picture, because this has some implications. This result by the Raiders, it could have been 4 in a row here. You're looking like you're heading towards that wild card race, and instead you're 5-8 outside looking in, and like way outside right now. Let's start with what we know here, Tyler. Bills, Chiefs, Titans feel like they're in. Ravens, great record, headed the wrong direction. Question marks around their quarterback. Bengals could jump them and send the Ravens down to that 5 line right now. Dolphins are only a game back of the Bills, but those 2 seats are filled. It's essentially 3-4 teams playing for that 7 seed right now, pending somebody dropping out here. And when we're looking at those teams, we're talking about the Patriots, the Chargers, the Browns, and here the Raiders really take a step back. Is this the season in your eyes for the Raiders, or is there a road back? We're looking at the 15th toughest schedule remaining when we talk about Las Vegas.
Yeah, it does feel like a fork in the Raiders, but you do have to throw out the caveat that this was an NFC team. I know that obviously you lose this game, but when you start getting to these tiebreaker scenarios, it is coming down to head-to-head conference records. The fact that you lost to an NFC opponent, it could be a lot worse. I guess I should say that. But ultimately, this could be a death blow to the Las Vegas Raiders. And, I was coming into this before Baker Mayfield pulled the Tom Brady out of his hat. You're thinking that this team could actually make a run to the playoffs. They had the head-to-head tiebreaker against the Los Angeles Chargers. They have the New England Patriots next week. If all of a sudden you're inching closer to 500, you're able to beat those teams that you're directly in contention with, you have a legitimate claim to the postseason. You can make that path, especially if all of a sudden the New York Jets start to falter. It wasn't a mostly difficult schedule for the Raiders either down the stretch. You could say their most difficult game was Week 18 against the Kansas City Chiefs, who could be resting starters at that point. We don't know. And the other one would be Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. Again, we don't know where those teams would have been. They could be resting players. They could be injured. You never know what's going to happen. So the fact that you drop this game to go even further below 500 is absolutely ridiculous in the way in which you lost that, because it's going to cost you a playoff spot at the end.
It comes at their cost, but the night belongs to Baker. It's time now for the Geico 15-second statement. Tyler Sullivan's ready to tee something up about the Raiders, maybe making the playoffs. That was before this. What do you got for us now, Tyler?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the Las Vegas Raiders could make a playoff run, but that seems to be over now. What I do think is interesting, and what we've seen from Baker Mayfield kind of proves it, because he's already done it once now with the Raiders, I do think that this Rams team could play spoiler down the stretch. They have a couple of teams that could be in the postseason. The Los Angeles Chargers, who we've talked about, the Seattle Seahawks, who we've talked about. They play those teams down the stretch, and if all of a sudden Baker Mayfield starts to marinate in this Sean McVay offense and starts to play well, he could be booting more teams out of the postseason before we know it.
I mean, whatever happened before this day, whatever happens after, this one belongs to Baker Mayfield. Tyler, great stuff as always. Thank you. Oh, and I'm sure there's plenty more to be said on the Pick Six podcast. It's the premier pod in the entire NFL. John Breach, Will Brinson, Ryan Wilson breaking it all down day in and day out with reaction to the craziness that is. Download, subscribe, and enjoy the Pick Six podcast.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.